Hello, everybody. I am here in Paich, Hungary. I apologize. This isn't a live thing that you can interact with me with. Um, I think it's about 2 in the morning for you guys right now. So I am going to record this and then upload it so that I think I can do this, so that it'll upload and be live, or be available to you on Facebook around the time that I might normally be on Facebook Live. So we're gonna try that. I will be traveling again on Wednesday on a train, so I'm doing it now Tuesday. It's Tuesday morning for me, late morning. We've been here in Paich for about a week. It feels like just a complete blur because the first few days were, jet lag and everything else like that. It has been absolutely wild to just walk around the city and see all the different things that have changed. I mean, it's been 20 years since I've been here. In case you were unaware, you're new to this or whatever, my wife and I met here in this city, and we're part of a team where we planted a church here. And so, coming back, it's been pretty crazy to see how in 20 years they have completely renovated so much of the city. There was this huge main square in the middle of town, and they tore it all out and they rebuilt everything except for the statues. They made it into a place where you can't, taxis can come into the outside circle of the place, but before it was just a major road. People went through there all the time, parked on the road, and now it's all blocked off. You can only walk through there, things like that. Another huge thing that has been really surprising to me has been how much more English I hear everywhere. People just walking around next to you will be talking in English. You can walk into almost any store and ask a question in English, and the storekeeper or the waiter or anybody will be able to answer you in English. It's incredible. There was almost not no English spoken here, but it was quite rare, especially to hear it just in the wild out, other people speaking English. I don't think I would have learned Hungarian if it had been this prevalent here. And we were speaking to some of the people who go, most of the people who go to the church that we planted here. It seems like most of them are students, foreign students. They have classes in this university that are completely done in English, and so people come from, we met people from Nigeria, Cameroon, what was the other? Kenya. Did I already say Kenya? Uganda, France, Germany, Texas. People from all over the world come out here for classes, and they told me they don't even try to learn Hungarian. Anyway, for the rest of our time here in Paich, we are going to be meeting with some Ukrainian refugees that my wife and my daughter met when they were out here previously. We're going to spend some time with them this afternoon, and then we're going to go visit some old friends from the church. There's a few people who are still here in town who were part of the church when we were part of the church all those years ago. So we're going to go have dinner with them tonight, and then after that we're going to head up to Budapest, and the majority of that time is going to be spent with the pastor who we worked with when we were here. He has moved on. He's up in Budapest now. And so I'm really looking forward to talking about how life has happened for both of us in the last 20 years since we met. So I really appreciate all of you guys' prayers. I know that I've heard from many people that they're going to be praying for us regularly. I'm sorry I'm completely out of contact as far as text and things like that. But you can email me still, and I'll get emails. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you guys about something that I've been learning and sort of processing in my head since we got here. And so it's still kind of, I guess, not completely thought through, but it's just been something that I've been thinking about a lot, and I think God is really trying to teach me something while we're here. And it really came home to me when I was at church on Sunday. It was the first time that I've been to Calvary Chapel of Page, Golgotha Page, since 2005, and that was only for like 2 weeks. We were here in 2005 because we had to move home in 2002. So it's been a long time since I've really been in touch with this church. When we left here, it wasn't really in what I would consider a solid, healthy place. We had been through a lot of, I'll just say, trauma as a church, right up to the point where we left. And then we had to leave, we were forced to, basically, because of the visa situation that we were in. I won't go into the details of that, but it was just time for us to go home. And, Caroline and I were both really concerned about the longevity of the church, how it was going to survive. Not because we were leaving, but just because of all of the things that were going on. And so walking into the church on Sunday morning and meeting people, we met the new pastor who's here now, and his family, and his co-pastor who was serving here. And we found seats, and we started singing, and we're singing in Hungarian, and we're singing about God's faithfulness in Hungarian. And it's like, I don't know if I remember singing those songs 20 years ago. They're old songs, but I don't know if those were part of our church repertoire at that point. But I knew the words, I could sing it. And of course, later on, they switched to English because so much of their church is English speaking. I was just overwhelmed by the faithfulness of God in what He has continued to do during all of this time. We were worried about how the church was going to survive, and then we heard that my roommate had to move away for work, and he was a major part of the church, and eventually the pastor moved up to Budapest to do different things, and so we didn't know what was going on here. We had no real contact with what was happening here for 15 years, really, until Caroline found them on Facebook during COVID. And so, she had told me, because she visited this church a couple years ago, and when she came out here, and she had told me that, hey man, it's a great church. She doesn't use the word man. That's my lingo. She didn't say hey man, but that was how I heard it. The church is healthy. The people are loving, vibrant. It's growing and reaching out. It's doing big things in the community here. And so I heard all that. And so, like, academically, I knew it. But to see it and to sing about it in Hungarian, it almost undid me in public as we were singing there together. And realized another thing that's sort of academically, I understood that God's work doesn't depend upon my contribution to it. You know, like I want to do the best that I can to serve the Lord. I want to make sure that I'm faithful in any ministry that God puts in front of me, and I do it to the best of my ability. But in the end, it's God who makes it work or lets it fall apart, right? It's not dependent upon me to make a change in somebody else's life. Really, you know, I can't do that, right? I can't reach inside and speak to their spirit. Only the Holy Spirit can do that. I can't change someone's heart. Only God can do that. And on this like bigger level of a church, you know, I was always thinking in the years since I've been away from here, you know, maybe I did things wrong. You know, I was 19 when I moved out here, barely. I knew nothing. I was a idiot kid, and I thought, man, I must have really screwed up the people there, being a 19-year-old suddenly as a, you know, pseudo pastor, I guess. I was more of a deacon. I guess they called me an assistant pastor. And just, you know, second guessing myself, doubting whether God had done anything good out here or not, or if, you know, we thought the church had died off. But we saw, and, you know, I got to be there with my kids, some of my kids at least, to show them, like, look, this is how God managed to continue to do something here despite my worst efforts, I guess. And just to really have that point driven home to me. And one of the funny things to me was that the pastor of this church, he kept grabbing me and bringing me over to somebody else and saying, hey, listen, like, this is the guy. He's the guy that brought us the bass guitar. This is the bass guitar guy. He kept telling people that. This is the bass guitar guy. Because when I was 19 years old, the first time I went home to visit my family, I let the worship leader of our church here in Page talk me into bringing back my bass guitar, because he knew that I had mentioned that I played the bass. He said, bring it back so that you can play in the church worship team. And I had only ever played by myself. I had never been part of a group before, and I only really knew how to play heavy metal. Sorry, but that's the kind of stuff that I had taught myself to play. And the worship pastor here was an agent of chaos, just completely a chaotic human being. I remember talking with him one time on the street while his 3-year-old son stuck a lighter in his nose that he found on the street and was like sparking it. And he was just patting him on the head, you know, like, oh, good boy. So he was a crazy guy. His name was Gabor. And we sat down to like prepare, like an hour before worship was going to start. He sat down with me and we were going to play music together. And I said, okay, so what chords do you play for these songs? You know, he wrote a lot of his music that we played too. So it wasn't like stuff that I would have known, just translated. It was like original stuff. What do you play, Gabor? What's the chord progression here? And he goes, I don't know. Gabor, I can't play with you if you can't tell me what chords you're going to play. He said, just let the Holy Spirit lead you. Just play whatever God puts into your heart. Which, you know, might sound good if you are not a musician, or if you are an extremely skilled, like if Larry Tagg, our bass player on Sunday mornings, if he was playing with Gabor, he could just play along. He would just look at his hands or hear the notes and he would be fine. I was not that. And so I just turned the volume knob on my bass completely all the way off and messed around up there, and that was the only time that the bass guitar was ever used in worship. It wasn't used. And so when I ended up leaving here, I left behind my bass guitar. And, you know, the hope was somebody eventually will come along who will be able to play with, Gabor didn't last long as our worship pastor, or worship leader, if that shouldn't be too surprising to you. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Gabor was hot and he took off his shirt to play worship on a Sunday morning. He had a denim vest on. So anyway, that's part of the little taste of what we, how worship and ministry and everything else was out here. Anyway, I left my bass guitar behind, not knowing, again, if it, you know, whatever was going to happen with it, it was kind of just a, you know, I can't really bring this home. I have too much stuff now. I was married by the time we were leaving, so we had a lot more stuff to bring home, and that was one of the things that we just left here. And I figured, you know, somebody eventually sold it or used it for something else. Who knew what happened with that? So that's my legacy now, is I'm the bass guitar guy. And they pointed out to me, they weren't using it that Sunday morning, but they pointed out to me the guy that normally uses the bass guitar when it's his, you know, in the rotation, they're going to use it on Easter Sunday. And he was a kid, he was one of the kids from the school. I think he was the Nigerian kid. His name's Ron. And I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, this guy was not even born when I brought this bass guitar over in like 2001 or 2000. There's no way that this human being was alive. And yet, God knew that Ron was going to tear it up on the bass, and he needed one. And apparently, it's really hard to get a good bass guitar. Bolash, the pastor here, he's really into sound. He's like, I visited his house, and he's got a sound studio in his house. And he had, I think, like 8 or 9 guitars and all kinds of other stuff they record in there and everything. And so he told me it's really hard to get a bass guitar that's actually a quality one here in Hungary. So he was super excited. That's why he introduced me as the bass guitar guy. And the wisdom and the faithfulness of God to know that guy's going to need the bass guitar a whole lot more than you ever will. So you should bring it here and leave it, and the church is going to be blessed for it 25 years after you end up going home. And that was just like the I don't know, the point of the spear that pierced my heart when I finally like wrapped my head around all of that I didn't need to come over here and play the bass guitar. God didn't need me to play the bass guitar with Gabor, but he wanted Ron to be able to play the bass guitar with the worship team, and it was going to be blessed. He didn't need my contribution. It wasn't dependent upon me, but he allowed me to be this tiny part of a church that, you know, it's gone through, like any other church, it's gone through a lot of difficult, rough times in the 25 years it's been a church. It's had a lot of rough ups and downs. But now it's like my wife reported to me, it's vibrant. It's reaching out into the community. It's doing good things. People are growing. They're, you know, because it's a college town, they have just a regular influx of young people, and they get them for 4 years, and then they send them out discipled and ready to be used in their community. So I was just amazed at the way God's work is so much bigger than the things that we can see, so much bigger than the things that we can imagine. You know, for me, since the last time I visited here 20 years ago, because it was 2005, so 19 years ago, was the last time we visited. It's been unknown and unseen. We had no idea what was happening here, or how God was working, or if there was people here who even believed in Jesus at all, right? And I saw it now, that the work of God is so much bigger than the little bits that we contribute to his work. And one of the things that sort of made me take another step back was thinking about these ruins that are over like in the middle of town. When we were here, there was like this sort of glass covered hole in the ground, not even very deep, and you could see through the glass, you could see like the tops of like some walls, and there was a sign, and people told me that it was Roman ruins from the Roman age, when this was a Roman city. It was called Sopiani, not H. And they thought that those Roman ruins that they found when they dug out like a fountain in the 1970s were possibly a Christian church that was here. Well, in the 20 years that I've been gone, they have fully excavated underneath all of that, and that little hole in the ground is now a World Heritage Site, registered with whatever that is. And you can walk down in there, you can touch the walls. It was a sepulcher, and the structure on top of it was like a funeral home kind of thing. And they found some tombs of Christians under the city, and they talked about it's a whole museum now. You could see a difference in the way that people had been buried in all of the graveyards around, Sopiani, as it changed from being a pagan town to being a Christian town. They changed the burial practices, and the Christians had an impact in the way that people lived. Like, they were putting all of the, stuff that they thought people would need to make it in the afterlife in the grave. And after a while, they realized, no, our dead, if they're believers, they go to heaven. They don't need any of our earthly goods. They're done with that kind of stuff. And so they would bury them without all of that stuff. And they decorated the tombs with paintings of Christian victory. There was Bible stories about which ones were there in there? Daniel, the lion's den. I can't remember what the pictures were, but pictures that depicted victory over death. And I realized, as I was thinking about that, I think about God's plan and God's work here in Page, beginning when we arrived to bring the gospel, which of course is very self-centered and foolish, because God has been working in this town since, I think it was like 8400 when I think that Christians first arrived here. And it's still going. And it isn't dependent upon my bass guitar or my efforts to disciple people, or my, faithfulness in anything. God is the one who's faithful. He's the one who brings about the work to finish. And as true as that is of Page Hungry, that's true in Nevada City, Nevada County, Grass Valley, Penn Valley. That's true in our families. That's true in our own lives. And I think about all of the work that God has done in me in the last 20 years that weren't dependent upon me being a good Christian, but depending upon God hanging on to me despite my complete foolishness. So I wanted to read a couple Bible verses to you. I had to copy them down because I didn't bring a paper Bible because we're traveling as light as we possibly can. We're on carry-on. So I copied these down from my Bible app. Since I'm using my phone to record this, I couldn't read them off my Bible app. So this is Philippians chapter 1, verse 3-6. And you probably knew I was going to read this verse, didn't you? Paul says, I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you all, making my prayer with joy, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. And that's Philippians chapter 1, verse 3-6. And as I was watching the church, as I was watching people interact with each other and love on each other, I noticed people talking to my kids. I just was kind of in my own little world, and I wasn't talking to people, but I looked over and there was people that were talking to my kids and encouraging them. And then we ended up being invited to the pastor's house for lunch, and then they do like all of their equipment for Sunday morning service is stored at the pastor's house. So they load it all in a van and bring it back to the pastor's house in the van. And then they have a meal together. All of the people who, like the deacons, the workers who make church happen, they all eat together at the pastor's house. And so they were gracious enough to invite us to that. And the whole time that I was there was these college students here who were just pouring into my kids' lives, telling them about, their experiences of Jesus and how they ended up here in Page Hungry and what they like about living here and the things that they've learned and all the rest. And so this is the 2 Corinthians, and this is where the pastor was preaching from on Sunday morning. But this was really driven home to me of 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 10. It's a passage about giving. And so Paul says, he who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. And I was just blown away by the idea of the tiny little seed that I helped to plant here 25 years ago, growing up completely unknown to me. And there's the verses of, I think it's 2 Corinthians chapter 3, I don't remember exactly which verses. Paul says that he planted a seed and Apollos watered it, but it was God who brings the increase. And so I planted a tiny little seed here, somebody else watered, and now there's fruit being harvested here. And it's a blessing to my kids' lives. Like, my kids are the ones who are reaping the fruit from that. So just, those are all the words that I have. And I feel like there's such a bigger thing in my heart that I cannot explain, of just being in the physical embodiment of God's faithfulness in church on Sunday morning was just mind-blowing. Obviously, I can't even figure out how to talk about it. But with all that being said, I very much still miss Simple Truth Church. I'm bummed out that we ended up being here during the whole Easter time. I wish I could be with you guys for Easter. But I know that you're praying for me, and I want you to know that I'm praying for you, and I'm thinking of you guys, and can't wait to get back and tell you guys all about the things that we got to see and do in person. So still a while before we get back to Nevada County, but we'll see you guys soon. Love you guys, and like I said, I'll keep you in my prayers. God bless you guys.